Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, and today we have Aki Balogh with us. Aki is co-founder and president of Market Muse. Prior to Market Muse, he worked with the CEO of InfinityB, a Series B startup that made an analytic database for big data engagements. Before joining InfinityB, he was an associate at OpenView Venture Partners, where he looked at Series B's investments in big data and machine learning. Now, I'm super excited to talk to him about machine learning, about AI and content, and how all this stuff is coming together. So welcome to the show, Aki.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, let's talk about the intersection of content and AI. Like some people, I'm sure, have read the articles in kind of Wired and Fast Company and that sort of thing that say, we're not going to be writing content anymore. It's going to be AI that's doing it for us. So all these people who are content creators are going to be out of a job, and that's coming very fast. Like GPT-3 is out now from OpenAI, and it's, although in private beta, some people have had access to that already, and they're creating entire articles, essays, ebooks, and things that are not written by a human, and humans can't tell. So I'm curious to hear what your view of the near-term future is in regards to content and AI.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that it's a great question because it points to sort of the evolution of, you know, kind of to take it back a couple of steps, the evolution of search and content and how all of this evolved. When the internet, first came out, obviously people were just putting content up and putting keywords, and search engines were indexing based on that. It was very rudimentary. Then, people started hacking that and just pushing out low quality content at scale. So search engines and Google in particular came back and started putting in kind of quality measures to actually read the content and actually understand the content of the content, or what is one technology they use are called knowledge-based trust factors. So can you trust this article because is it factually true? And really understanding what a concept is and what subcomponents comprise a concept, or another way to think about it is what questions are people asking to get to the content, and then what do they want to understand once they're there, and how they navigate that learning journey. That's been Google's mission all along, and Google is just, of course, just a company, but they are really driving the technology of this versus something like Facebook, where they are just pretty rudimentary at this, I would argue. So you had this kind of evolution of machines reading content. On the writing side, first you had kind of keyword research tools and suggestions, and hey, you might want to use this based on this word is a different, it has more demand or something like that. That evolved to content optimization software such as, Market Muse, where you're actually reading or you're helping a writer understand what's topically relevant. So in order to describe a topic, what kind of components do you have to have in there, or should you have in there to basically be, have essentially information value? How do you increase the value of information as a human? And then, obviously, article generation is just the next step of that. The reason I go through all of that history is because the generation of the actual article is not just like one endpoint. There isn't just one way to write an article. So if you put in, a title and have it generate, there are multiple interpretation steps that happen. And they either, happen via, there's either a human operator involved at those steps, or you just press the button and presto, it spits it out. But, even though there was an article in The Guardian that was really interesting, that was basically an AI, writing to humanity, like, it was kind of cool. But even that article wasn't just like, they didn't just put in a topic, hit the button, and it spit it out. They actually generated a bunch of articles and they cut pieces and compiled it. So there's an editorial step that happened. And so, in terms of self-driving content, I tend to tell folks the difference between self-driving content and self-driving cars is there's only one way to correctly drive a car to a destination. But if with content, any given topic could have thousands or tens of thousands of ways you'd want to write about it, or maybe more than tens of thousands. There are different angles you can take. There are different kind of tributaries you can go into, and of course, for every topic, if you add expert knowledge, your own knowledge to it, it becomes more valuable, and it's net new, new information. And so the machine, can synthesize large amounts of information and do pattern matching, but it can't bring that, wisdom that, somebody doing a job for quite some time, is able to instill. So it's not so much, people tend to think of it. It is, in a way, it is kind of a discontinuous product or evolution, but in a way, it's actually kind of related to the previous layers. And so where we see this kind of tactically evolving is you're going to want to use the machine to give you maybe components of an article, and then you can assemble the article from components. We're not yet at the point where you're actually going to want to have the machine just write everything and then you just publish to the web. The level of AI required for that would be kind of strong AI. It would have to be very, it would have to be artificial general intelligence, which we don't have to worry about for at least a couple more decades, maybe, hopefully.
Well, at least a couple more years. Although GPT-3 has fooled a number of people. Like, I think there was a Guardian article published, maybe this is the same one you're talking about, that was written completely by GPT-3. And the headline of the article, which wasn't written by GPT-3, was this article was written by an AI or something along those lines.
That's right, and that's the same article. It's great, it's great because it gets people excited about, and worried but excited about the future. But that article was actually generated n number of times, I think 8 or more times, and then they cut pieces together and then they kind of edited it. So although the words were technically, yes, the words were written by a machine, but the humans compiled the article based on the goals that they wanted to achieve, which is to get us to read it, and that worked.
Gotcha. Okay. And so where does AI fit into Market Muse? Because I know that's kind of one of your selling points of the software is it's got machine learning baked into the product, and it makes it a better technology than some of your competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. To answer that question, I'll just give a 30-second kind of how did I even get into this? Because for me, I was mentioning before our show, it's a huge honor to be talking with you. You wrote the book on SEO. I read that book and I learned a lot from it. But I did not come from the SEO world. I came, as you pointed out, from the machine learning and investment and kind of startup tech world in a way. And so I wanted to take an AI or machine learning approach to content marketing. And that was sort of, and I wanted to do it to help society. I want to build an AI technology that helps society, and I thought content would be a good way to do that. So so in that spirit, the first product that we built, which was called Content Analyzer, but now we call it Optimize, basically takes an article and gives you suggestions for what topics you might want to include to make that article more impactful and more informational. That first product, we basically invented that. There were other similar prototypes of products that were looking to do similar things, but the way that we built that product and the quality of data and the software worked, and it had not really worked for others before. That was our first foray back, I think 2015, maybe prototype in 2014, but certainly to market in 2015. And from there on, and in order to build that technology, we built what we call our knowledge graph system, but it's basically what's called a topic modeling system. So it's a system where, given a topic, we go to the machine goes to the web, reads 10,000 articles on a topic, distills the essence down, and gives you, the human, an outline of how to write, to cover that topic comprehensively. So it's kind of large scale pattern matching and distillation. That's done through topic modeling. So that was our core technology. We now have a patent on it, but essentially we've put a lot of engineering and data science focus into strengthening that. And then on top of that, we've just built a system of products essentially. So we went from, optimizing an existing page to researching new topic ideas to what are the questions that people are asking that are topically relevant to what are the linking, connections, what other pages on your site should you link to what is your competition doing, so competitive analysis. So that was those are all what I call page level applications. So for optimizing an individual page, you can use those. And then we went to the next level. In late 2018, we launched a system that'll analyze your entire site and connect all the topics and pages and things together. And it can show you essentially the breadth and depth of your topic clusters. So in layman's terms, for a given concept, given topic, how many pages do you have that relate to that topic? And where are you strong and weak, and where do you have opportunity, and what should you work on next? What topics should you work on next, and what articles should you create that are gaps? Like where do you have content gaps and topical gaps? So that was a whole nother level, to our offering. And then now we've just launched a few months ago the third level, which is we'll generate it for you using AI to fill. Now that we have these outline, we know what topical gaps you have. You pick some, we can estimate the value of, how much money would you make if you fill those gaps, which is good for getting budget to, to resource the project. So then you make your hit list of articles, and then we can actually generate the articles. And we have, to my earlier point, we have sort of several editorial steps to make sure that the article that rolls off the other end of the production line actually meets the original goal that you wanted to meet.
Wow, that's quite a comprehensive product suite. And so if we're to look at this from just a page model, like or a kind of at the page level. Let's say that you have an article about lawnmowers, and you don't talk about related topics, what Brian Dean of Backlinko would refer to as Lsi Keywords, which is kind of not the best term, I think, because LSI is not a thing that Google's using, but it's a way to refer to related topics in a very SEO kind of acronym type way. So these LSI keywords or these related topics, if you have an article about lawnmowers and it doesn't talk about grass or lawns or lawn care or gardeners or landscapers or landscaping or weed whackers or weeds or gardens or anything else, it's just lawnmower, 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 you have a very surface level, thin piece of content. And your early iteration, which has evolved quite significantly, could identify that your article is thin in that way, because thin content isn't just a small word count. It's also about being very surface level and shallow in the addressing of the topic.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. Essentially, all of these acronyms, TF-IDF, LSI, LDA, latent Dirichlet allocation, neural nets, whatever, rank brain, whatever, all these like technologies that people use, they're all basically ways to model how our brains learn. Basically, content is learning. So how do you actually, if you're looking to buy a lawnmower, what are the types of questions you ask? And it could be, the use of it. So will this cut this type of weed or grass or whatever? That's one thing. It could be the product features. So is it like the one where I push it, or is it the one where I sit on it, or is it there are lawnmowers that operate with no electricity, maybe in a rural area, or is it gas or whatever? So the product features, the value props, and then the different audiences. So are you a gardener? Are you this, is this for a home? Is this for, commercial operation? And so essentially you want to cover what you're about, what is your company about? What are your products about? What audiences do you serve and what value do you provide? And then how is it differentiated from, other lawnmowers or whatnot? You want to write all of those down, and all the technologies do is just help us get there. I had this conversation with a CEO of a very large writing network the other day, and he's like, well, I don't know about this AI. I think this is not right. I think it's gonna, really hurt the quality of content. And I'm like, well, this is just the AI is not the machine specifically natural language generation technology, which is different from what we were doing earlier, topic modeling and content analysis. Now, generation technologies are just going to be another, productivity boost. They're not going to completely replace humans because humans, as a business, as a lawnmower business, you actually have a lot of knowledge about lawnmowers that you have not put pen to paper. That's basically the constraint. So you have a lot of subject matter experts that would love to write articles, but they don't have time because they're like designing lawnmowers and stuff, right? So what if you could take that knowledge and that science and product knowledge and commercial insights and actually put it into your content at scale? You would need an enabling technology. And right now, the enabling technologies are agencies where they'll like, oh, yeah, we'll do it for you. We'll write all the best lawnmower stuff in the world. But they never built a lawnmower. So then you might have, an entry-level marketer writing about stuff, and you're reading, and you're like, oh gosh, like there's no way they would know, but actually that's not quite accurate, and so the idea is to inject the brain, the knowledge into your content onto the internet, because that's another thing people assume, that the internet, it has like great content. It doesn't. Yeah. It really doesn't. When you analyze the internet, some articles, some content is very strong, like Justin Bieber or credit cards. Lots of credit card search content on there. Of course, a lot of money to be made. But there are a lot of, try searching for like Mongolian cultural, reference. It's just very rare to find. And of course, some of those are because it's less commercial, but just there's a lot of content gaps. There are a lot of commercially viable topics where the quality of content on the web is low. Warehousing systems, software, SaaS warehousing systems is one that just I was showing somebody recently, and just almost all the content on it stinks because people just haven't written it yet. And so, but there are a lot of people in the world who know about warehousing SaaS company software, and there are a lot of people who need to know because they have a warehouse and they would really benefit from learning more about how to optimize their warehouse.
Right. So, well, there are lots of different ways that we could go down this rabbit hole. So, first of all, let's talk about identifying those content gaps. Like, how do you figure out using machine learning or AI what the content gaps are? Like, I know there are tools from SEMrush and Ahrefs, for example, that will look at competitors and compare you with the competitor and see what keywords they're ranking for and you're not. So that's a content gap analysis that can be quite helpful. But I think you're talking about something a bit more advanced than that, right?
Yes. So the way we look at it, so you have a couple kind of factors. You have how much demand is there for a topic, so how much search volume for a topic and the related topics and stuff. How big is that market? What's the competition level? So is it, mesothelioma highly competitive, or is it, Mongolian culture not competitive? So that's another factor. The third factor that we've added in is relevance. So, what is relevant to that topic? So to your earlier point, lawnmower, gardener, and weeds are somewhat related. So that should measure into that calculation. It's not just a 2x2, it's actually 3x3. Or some sort of, maybe some other geometric figure. But essentially, once you have that model, that map, you can essentially read all of the pages, all of the keywords, topics, everything you're ranking for, everything you mentioned in the article itself, just create this big, collection of concepts and then start to connect the dots. And the machine can actually do this because it works in what's called a high dimensional vector space. So it can actually model your entire site in high dimensions in a way that a human brain could not do. Let's say you model your site in 10,000 or even a couple hundred or a couple thousand dimensions, and it can basically make these connections and just run a bunch of math and basically say, oh, there you go, that gap, that article is something that you're missing, but it's highly relevant. It's very attractive from an SEO demand generation standpoint, and it's very core to your message. And it's something that you can differentiate on versus competitors. It's kind of untouched by others. Write that first. And when you write that, it does better in search. And your CFO is looking at you and basically saying, wow, we're doing so well in demand gen. And how are you doing this? Well, the machine just finds these ideas, and then a content strategist or SEO kind of evaluates the ideas, goes one by one, and just bangs them with the content.
Right. So this is as much about creating new content. So content gap is looking at where have you not written pages of content that you should be, but also you have existing pieces of content that don't cover in depth the topic well enough. They don't refer to, like in the lawnmower example, to lawns or grass or clippings or yards or yard care. Like those are very closely related topics, whereas gardening and patio or deck are or landscaping would be a little less relevant or closely aligned to the keyword or the topic of lawnmower.
Yes. So the system does its, big crunching thing, and it gives you a list of basically new articles you should write and existing articles you should optimize. And then you can kind of pick your strategy. So some agencies and companies like to optimize, not publish so much. Others like to just publish and never optimize. Some do 50-50, whatever. But basically, you can pick your battles as to, what you want to do. Plus, what are some campaigns you might be running? What are some seasonality things? The different aspects to your business that might be, relevant or important at that particular time. And then also, you have to think about what level of resource are you applying. So, if you don't have a lot of authority, on page or off page authority or topical authority on something, you're going to have to spend more resources, time, money, people, time, and so on. You're going to have to spend more resources to hit that goal. And so you've got to kind of do this cost benefit. But essentially, yes, you make your hit list of new articles to create and existing to optimize, and then you link them together.
Yeah. So how do you interlink these different pages? Because if we were to look at an example, let's say like the New York Times, they have these topic pages that they can rank quite well. Like, for example, for the keyword Iraq, they're on the first half of page 1 with a topic page, which is pretty impressive. And that topic page doesn't even have a description of Iraq and some of the like just an overview of the geopolitical issues and that sort of thing. It's just recent news articles. And so if you look at how they're linking to the topic page internally, they're not just doing it in a brain dead sort of rote approach. They're doing it in a way that adds value to the user, to the reader, as well as to Google. So, for example, they won't take just the first occurrence of the word Iraq in the article and turn that into a link to the topic page, especially if there's another link in that same sentence that goes to a much more important recent article about a topic that or an issue, a current event that happened, that they don't want to take emphasis away from that by adding a link to the topic page. And they're not going to just have a list of tags or topics at the bottom of the article with 50 different keywords, and they're all linking to various topic pages, because that's another pretty popular but not very effective SEO approach that you'll see a lot of. So I'm curious, like, what's the secret sauce behind interlinking these different new pages and the existing pages that you've optimized so that you get an optimum flow of link equity internally, and good context as well with the anchor text, but not over optimized and not too over the top. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that's part of the art of SEO and writing for the web. The first place you start is kind of what are the user intents or the searcher intents. To your point, when people search Iraq, they're maybe it seems like less likely to look at, think about the touristic, things they could explore, and more likely to think about conflict, which is, it is what it is, right? We wish it were better. But that's what it is. So the most of the intents Google, points toward, news articles and stuff. But that may or may not be the case. When people search lawnmower, like, are they looking to learn about lawnmowers in abstract? Are they looking to buy a lawnmower near where they live? Are they looking to compare a lawnmower to a weed whacker? It could be any of those, right?
Mm.
So as a business, you really do have to think through all the stages in your buyer's journey, your different audiences, and then go to the topic layer. And that's part of the human interpretation that you do, as a content strategist. Then once you have your content and you're looking to link them, one of the most common questions as well. Okay, so I have these pages and I have all these like snippets of information. Do I put it all in one article, or do I kind of like spread it out? And if so, how? It really depends. So you do want to, the most popular, or I guess the way to do it is a hub and spoke model, where you have what's called a pillar page, which is typically a long, like, probably, I haven't seen it, but probably the New York Times has like a long explainer page on Iraq. And then you have subtopics and different places you would navigate to learn more about, I want to say Kandahar, but that's in Afghanistan. But, what's the state of the military in Iraq? What's the state of, oil, whatever, and you navigate to those pages. Constructing that structure is what you really do as a strategist. The machine can give you ideas and basically say, this information should be somewhere, but then how you compile it, is more up to you. We can suggest basically, and anyone doing this by hand, but we also do it, through AI or through the machine. But we can suggest, here are pages on your site that are related to this page. So lawnmower, weed whacker, weeds, these are pages you should link together because of the topics, and you would drop it in as anchor text. So the lawnmower, is rated for this type of weed, and then you click on weed and it goes to the weed page, and then, or weeds, or I don't know. It's another user intent problem right there. But basically, we can surface those latent, connections, but then you would pick from there and use that to basically build out your topical hub in the way that you want to. Just, basically there's a difference between like reading a book with a table of contents and you typically go front to back, versus the web. You arrive somewhere and then you bounce around, and then, and then you click on this ad or something, and now you're on the Twitter page. And so it's a much more, you just want to follow what, the journey that you want your customers to have.
Yeah. So how do you create this content that explains the topic? And that's something that used to exist on the topic pages on the New York Times, but they've removed it. So there used to be a paragraph or two about Iraq on the Iraq page, and now it's gone. And it's just links to all the different recent articles about Iraq. And I think that's going backwards in terms of value for the user and for SEO. But I wasn't involved in that process. They're not a client or anything, so I just happened to notice that. So how would you create that description, that explainer copy to go on this topic page?
Yeah, the way that I would think about it is how do you create like a Wikipedia type entry for your company or your product or your the message you want to deliver. You know, when you search on things, obviously Wikipedia typically comes up on page one, and they've done that because they have a lot of original information and it's very high quality and it's very well linked. It's 100% humans, doing that to my knowledge. Maybe they used to, actually, we should probably talk to them, but do that after this. But to my knowledge, it's completely crowdsourced, but they've done a good job. But that definition of information, what is a rock? What is the state of the Iraq conflict? Whatever these things are, what is the history of the conflict? That's one way of doing it, which is great and it works really well. But if you are an Iraq researcher or a entity that maybe an NGO that wants to that has unique information, you should seek to create your own. What is Iraq, or what is the history of Iraq, or what is the history of the U.S. military in Iraq? You might want to create that yourself to essentially compete with Wikipedia. And to the extent that you can do it for certain questions, or if you do it well, you can outperform Wikipedia. Like, for us, if you search what is content strategy, we come up, because we wrote a lot about content strategy, and it's actually unique and novel and it's highly factual information. The last part of what I just said is sort of where we are now with the tech, is we're trying to figure out how to make it more factual. And how do you that's sort of the challenge with GPT-3 and NLG and everything is, and just information today is like, how do we make sure that it's actually factually true? And we try to do it by looking at a lot of content on the web, but it's not there isn't an easy solve to that. But anyway, as long as you have high quality information that is net new in some way, like if you just basically take the Wikipedia page and make a poor quality version of it, it's not going to really add anything to the discourse. But there, like I said, when you analyze these pages and what's ranking and what are the top pages on Google, there's so much white space. There really is an incredible amount of stuff that has never been written about because people they just haven't spent the time, and it's just like there for the taking.
Okay, so let's take the example of what is content strategy. How have you seen that white space, or your technology has seen that white space, identified this opportunity to create something that adds to the discourse, and what exactly is that novel or unique angle or additional research or perspective that you've added around content strategy?
Yeah, for us, it really is. It's really topical authority. So it's kind of still kind of a niche term, but it's starting to gain traction. We invented the term topical authority. To my knowledge, we invented the term about 5 years ago because we're trying to describe like what are we doing, and just saying like adding information value to things was like a lot of words. So topical authority. So it's what I said earlier about volume, competition level, and relevance. So from a relevance standpoint, how strong are you on which topics do you have a presence on? And for each of those topics, how strong are you? And how well have you covered it? And what's essentially the breadth and depth of your topic cluster, your topical coverage against that one specific topic? And then how many topics do you have? And then, and so measuring that and plugging that into your formula, your SEO opportunity formula, that's what we're pioneering essentially. And then the trick is then also talking about it in kind of non-SEO terms, because the reality is that there are millions of people writing content on the web in order to drive demand, and to educate people about the products and services, and that's amazing. And only a fraction of them are like technical SEOs, and most of them are editors and writers, and they're making judgments on, they're making, human judgments on things. So how can we have that, like, how can we like have the machine intelligence help them achieve their goals so that they write great stuff, but we don't have to like, teach them on how does latent derivative allocation work, so that's been we've threaded that topical authority into these kind of general high level explainer pages on what is content strategy.
Got it. Okay. And how are these pages doing in terms of uh, traffic generation? Are they getting a lot of visits, or is it just kind of long tail stuff?
I mean, it's always relative. It's been great. It's powered our whole business. It's made us who we are. We have hundreds of customers. Many of them are companies you recognize. Many of them, even better, are startups you don't recognize, and they really need content to drive demand, and we're enabling their success. And we've been called, like, quote unquote, the undisputed leader in the industry, which, like, cool. I'd be happier if more people knew about the industry. That's our bigger challenge, is people don't know that you can optimize content through AI, or they don't even know what content marketing is, sadly, or they have like heard of it, but they'd rather just buy ads. And like there's a lot of those awareness challenges that we face. But for our footprint and for the amount of demand and leads and inbound we need to generate, we've been able to do it 100% on content. And we're really happy, because kind of like proof is in the pudding. Even if you search many of our competitors, competitor A versus competitor B, we come up because we've written a better page about them. And then, of course, and then we compare both of them to Market Muse. So there's just a lot of knowledge we've put out there. And when someone's just, I mean, when I was just starting out a few years ago, I had, $0. I couldn't buy software, but at least I could read up on stuff and educate myself, and then kind of do it by hand. And that's totally cool too. So for this segment of, entrepreneur people starting businesses, they don't necessarily have to buy what we do. I mean, we now have a free version, an always free version called Market Muse Trial. But even if they don't use any of that, at least they'll know like how to do this stuff on a high level, and then just kind of map it by hand. That's totally fine too. But yeah, we've added a lot of kind of, original, information and ideas to the web. And for us, for on a business side, for a company, we're not a massive conglomeration. We're a small company. For the amount of traffic we need to drive, that's been totally enough. We've been able to just kind of achieve multiple goals. We drive enough demand to power our sales channel. We drive enough awareness to educate the market slowly over time. I wish it would happen quickly, but it happens slower, but that's okay. At least it's happening. It's going to continue to happen. It's compounding. And we've really, by writing it, we've really learned it ourselves by having to teach it. So we also, it kind of pulls the company together, and people, learn up quicker, and they onboard better, and they provide better service, in our team. So all of that can be accomplished through content. It's basically like, it's like educate. It's like we're sneaking education into people's heads, which is great. I mean, that we want to increase, the amount of knowledge and information and then wisdom that, comes from that.
Gotcha. And so when you're creating content, or you're getting machine learning assistance in creating this content, are you thinking in terms of people into different stages in the buyer journey, that they're like, I'll use an acronym I learned from Keith Krantz, who was also a guest on this podcast, and it's called UPSYD, UPSYD. Unaware, problem aware, solution aware, your solution aware, and then finally decision. So if you're completely unaware that you have a problem, how do you attract people to your site and sell them on your solution? That's an interesting problem to have, right? If they're problem aware, but they're completely clueless about how to solve it, maybe they have symptoms of a certain disease, but they don't know what the disease is. It's kind of undiagnosed, and maybe it's restless leg syndrome, and they don't know what the solutions are. Like, oh, they should have more magnesium or whatever in their diet, or take a supplement. So they're problem aware, but they're not yet solution aware. And then solution aware, they know there's solutions out there. They know that there's topic modeling, for example, or there's a topic type of explorer type tools, but they just don't know that your solution exists. And then the Y for your solution, and then finally D for decision, where they've got all the information and they're at a decision point. So creating content for those different audiences, I think, is really smart, because not everybody is at the decision point and they just want to see your testimonials and case studies and just whatever kind of sales collateral that will push them over the edge. Maybe they're just completely new to this space and they don't realize that there's a better way.
Yes, most companies, unfortunately, and we are where we are, but most companies have focused on that, last stage where it's like buy now or here's 20% off to buy. Like surely it's the price,
Yeah.
and
Free
people
shipping.
free shipping. It's like, satisfaction guarantee. It's like, and people are like, well, buy what? So to your point, it's, it is those four stages. And so you need to, if nothing else, you need to have the consideration content, should it be company A or a competitor, and why? That's pretty important. But to, if you're really going to do a good job, you need to have that high awareness content of what is the thing in the first place, and why would you use it? And if you have, if your legs are moving at night or whatever, maybe you don't know the term restless leg syndrome. Like you just know, like, my legs are moving, or I wake up sore, in the morning or whatever. I haven't had it, so I don't know what the symptoms are, but that, whatever those things are, you might just be searching for like weird symptoms, and then and then you learn about a term. And then once you can put a name on something, that's a huge, like stepwise, it's a big step in the learning journey. Once you can name something, then you know what to put in Google, then you can read about it, and the rest kind of flows from there. But
Right.
like, what do
To
you
your
name
point
something?
there about restless leg syndrome as an example, I don't have it, thankfully, but I think one of the symptoms is like your legs feel prickly, and it keeps you up. Like it's very uncomfortable, and so if you're searching for legs are prickly at night while trying to sleep, just finding that term restless leg syndrome is a huge milestone in figuring out the solution, because now you got a name that you can search on, you can look it up in Wikipedia, you can see what other symptoms go with it and what are some of the solutions and so forth.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk for a couple of minutes here. I know we're running short on time, but personas, avatars, like defining what those persona types are and what motivates them, not just their demographics and psychographics, but what is their internal problem, not just the external problem, but the internal problem, using that terminology from Donald Miller's story brand framework. But also then, what are the four forces, the wants, the aspirations, the frustrations, and the fears that trouble them or kind of motivate them, so that once you've identified those things, you can weave that into the copy that you're writing to make it more persuasive and more relatable and inspire them to take action.
Yeah, yes. I mean, one is, to your point, essentially, how do you inject empathy into your content and your messaging? These people, especially when we work with medical content, and we're not doctors, but we certainly, generate and help and provide insights on medical conditions, and then an expert evaluates it. But the software does a really good job of, things, suggesting things that are technically accurate, because it's looking at a mass amount of content. So we have statistical significance helping us, with this. But when you write that kind of content, the people who are searching for it are suffering likely suffering from a condition. And if you get the content wrong or you forget to mention something, that could impact somebody's health outcome, in a negative way. So that's, that's really, a big part of it. The other part of it is, it wouldn't be when I say content, I automatically assume, just because of the nature of my work, I automatically assume SEO, long form, written articles, text articles. But there are actually obviously many other types of content, social content and videos and stuff like that. So you want to, basically, although typically it's siloed, so you'll have one team writing the articles, another team doing the social media, but those wants and desires and fears, are reflected, especially on social media. It really does come out. And so you want to have some line of communication there. It's I guess it would be too optimistic to ask that you merge the groups. Some companies are able to do that. So some companies basically take different, let's say, topics or products, and they have like little teams of, you have one content person, one social person, and one this, one ads, and one this and that, in each, along each topic. That's really smart. But even if you have a small team, just have them kind of talking, because you'll have basically a lot of, especially fears, right? People react to fears and anxieties an order of magnitude faster than they react to like good news. And so, you want to make sure that, that's injected into your overall knowledge base that you're essentially building on the web.
Yeah. Yeah. So, great point to get those different silos, those different people talking to each other, so that somebody who's creating video content and somebody who's creating article content can share their learnings and their empathy for the target audience with each other, and so that gets baked into to both formats. There are probably some tools outside of Market Muse that you think are pretty cool, and I'll just name a few that come to mind that relate to our discussion here. One is called Lumen 5, lumen5.com, and that has some AI to it, where it takes an article or blog post and creates a social video out of it that kind of distills the key points from that article, puts those key points into different frames, and then adds imagery or stock video to that with music, so that you can watch this video that was generated automatically, but of course it doesn't publish it until you go in and you tweak it and say, oh, actually that's a little bit still too verbose. Let me cut some words out of that. Let's actually change the stock video that it chose to something else that I think is a little more appropriate as a metaphor. Let's add a little call to action at the end of the video, and boom, now hit publish, and it creates this really cool video. It took a fraction of the effort. So that's one great tool. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Have you heard of Lumen 5?
I haven't used them, but I've heard of that type of technology, yes.
Yeah, so that's one. And then there are several free keyword research tools that help you to identify questions that your audience is asking. There's answerthepublic.com, which is based on Google Suggest. And then there's also asked.com. Have you tried Also Asked? Dave, are you familiar with that tool?
I haven't tried it, but to be honest, we have one, and it's also free now, called Market Muse Trial. I mean, you can run 7 queries in it a month, so it's a little more limited, but it has. So I just use our stuff. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Answer the Public. It's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
it was an inspiration.
Yeah. So I like Also Asked even more than Answer the Public. I like both of them, but they're just different because Also Asked is based on the People Also Asked box in the Google results. So you'll get this really cool visual that you can save. You can also save a CSV file, and you can double click on just click on one of the questions in the kind of the flowchart thing, or the I don't know what kind of graph it is, like a tree graph or whatever. And then it will reorient to that question being the center point, and then all sorts of additional questions come from that. It's really cool, and it's free. So that's another tool that our listener might want to check out. And then finally, TubeBuddy, which does A/B split testing of titles and video thumbnails for YouTube. And so I'm curious if there any of any of this has spurred on any question, or like any particular favorite tools or things that the best practices, questions, topics, or whatever that the listener should think about as they're doing their content planning.
Yeah, absolutely. There are quite a few. In fact, in a few weeks, I'm presenting at a CEO forum about just showing our entire, not our technology stack, but I mean that too, but our entire business architecture stack and all the things that we do, and all the layers. There's so many layers to so many great software platforms out there. I mean, two that that immediately come to mind that have made a big difference for us. One is actually a community, the Marketing AI Institute, run by Paul Rutzer. They've done a great job at basically just defining what types of AI exist in marketing. Content, video, social, what. They gather all the software platforms, and they kind of explain like what does each one do and how to use them, and it's just a great community. I don't know if they have a Slack community that would be valuable. We have a Slack community for anyone who's interested in content strategy, of course, shameless plug, but Marketing AI for like just high level, like what are all the things out there that AI is doing. That's one thing. And then another platform that we found really helpful is one called MadKudu, MADKUDU. And basically it's a predictive, they build a predictive machine learning model for lead scoring. So basically when you write a bunch of content, you have, all these inbound leads, but they're inbound. So you get all different types, big companies, small companies, random roles, whatever, and geographies. And so, they all go into your Salesforce or your CRM, but then you don't really know, like, okay, of the thousands of people, who do I talk to first and in what order? So what MadKudu does is they run a model, and they basically look at, who's more likely to convert, who's more likely to buy something, who's more likely to spend more money with you. They run, different analyses. And basically, they give you this API, and you plug it into Salesforce. And so when a lead comes in, it just spits out a number, like 1 out of 100. So like this is an 80, like chase after them. They're really important. This is a 40, like don't worry about it, just let them just kind of nurture and come back. So it's an intelligent, they basically do the heavy lifting to figure out your lead scoring, which is for us magic.
Oh, that's super cool. Is that a paid tool, or is that free or freemium, or what?
Paid. In fact, probably in the, I don't know, thousands or low tens of thousands maybe, but they should have something free. I would hope. I'll actually reach out to them, because they're so complementary to what, inbound, that people should be able to access it. So I haven't looked at their site in a while, but it's worked for us.
That's great. That's very cool. So if somebody wanted to try out Market Muse Pro, do you have any kind of special deal for them, or how can folks do the trial, the Market Muse trial free version? How can they do the Pro version? And what's the next step for them?
Yeah, totally. It's easy. Go to marketmuse.com. Up on the top right, you can click Get Started Free. That'll, you sign up there. That'll drop you into our quote unquote always free software, Market Muse trial, basic freemium. So you can just start to, it has trainings. It's got a great tutorial, a bunch of trainings. It's got a Market Muse Academy for like 201 and 301 level concepts. So you can just get started using it there. If you enjoy it, and if you want to analyze your entire site, you can put in a credit card, and then you get 1 month free of Market Muse Pro, or now we have Plus, which is kind of a lighter version of Pro, but either of them basically will analyze up to 500 pages on your site, give you insights on it. There's a promo code 1 month free, which will give you 1 month free. by the time you probably hear this, we'll probably have a more slicker way, so you don't even have to do that. But anyway, if you need a promo code, you can either, chat on Drift, we've got chat, or email me. I'm at aki@marketmuse.com. But anyway, you should have a 1 month, opportunity to try it out. And after that, it's either $179 a month or $499, and it could be $325 with an annual plan. So it's just a couple $100 a month to analyze a small site. And then if you have a very large site, we work with a lot of major publishers, a lot of major brands, especially financial services and enterprise software both need a lot of, writing about your stuff. And so, we have premium packages available, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I'll include the promo code in the show notes for this episode as well. And
Thank you.
If folks wanted to follow you on social media or connect with you directly, you gave your email address, but what's your preferred social platform that you're most active on?
Yeah, my Twitter is Aki Balogh, Akibalogh. The company's Twitter is Market Muse Co. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I try to crunch through email often, so email's good, but of course it can get blocked sometimes. I have AI filtering my inbox. That I should mention that too. Sanebox, SANEBOX. So sometimes it accidentally filters out something important. So, LinkedIn, all of those, but Aki Balogh. Luckily, not a lot of people are called Aki Balogh in the world.
Are you the only one?
Well, the reality is Aki is a nickname. My legal name is Akos, which is a word that comes from Turkish. It's just hard to pronounce. So I go by Aki. And then, and because it's a nickname, not a lot of people professionally use that name in Hungary.
Got it. Okay.
So I might be the only Aki Balogh as far as I know.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Aki. This was great. And I hope that and I actually think it will have inspired our listener to think differently in terms of their content creation and content optimization strategy. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been
a
pleasure.
All right, so we'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, signing off.